Earlier today, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act.
Well, this decision was certainly a disappointment. We had hoped that the whole thing would be found unconstitutional. As it turns out, it's mostly constitutional, except for the small Medicaid point that was made in the course of the opinion.
Chief Justice Roberts was okay with all of the precedent before Obamacare came along. The wheat case Wickard from 1942, the medicinal marijuana case, all of the things that we've been talking about for a couple of years. He said that the government cannot do more than that, that to allow it to require people to buy things as a regulation of interstate commerce would be a license to regulate people from cradle to grave, which is beyond the scope of the Commerce Clause.
That was an important victory, but sort of a hollow victory because that power now resides in the taxing power, which has always been very, very broad and now is even broader.
It might be hard for Congress to put through a tax on not buying the New York Times or not buying broccoli, but that will be only a political check, not a constitutional one.
Taxes are a lot more problematic politically than simply passing a regulation. People understand when their taxes are going up. They may not understand some of the other requirements that Congress could put into effect under the Commerce Clause.
You have the choice. Either you can do this activity that the government wants you to do, or you can pay a lot of money. That, for a lot of reasons, is no different than the mugger coming up to you saying your money or your life.
What kind of a tax is it? It's not an income tax, it's not an excise or an impost or any of the other kinds of taxes that are recognized by the Constitution, and in particular by the taxing power. And it certainly isn't uniform throughout the United States, as the taxing power requires.
Taxes are generally meant to raise revenue. Penalties are meant to punish for behavior or non-behavior.
The taxing power is not an independent power. It's a power to obtain the money in order to carry out Congress's other powers. There is no other power to enact Obamacare or anything close to it.
Ideally, they would want everyone to get health insurance and no one to pay the penalty, so they would raise no revenue. So there's an important distinction there, and that distinction matters in terms of what powers Congress is using when they enact this penalty, or tax, as we now know, and it also matters in terms of what the people know that Congress is doing, because now we know that they taxed us.
They sold it as a regulation. Obama said that this was not going to be a new tax, and now we have effectively a bait and switch that the court worked in conjunction with Congress.
They essentially took the cynical, or maybe in light of history, the more realistic approach that politicians' words are essentially meaningless.
The Supreme Court upheld a law that Congress did not pass and would not have passed. But the more you look at this ruling, the more you see this is a mixed ruling and has some significant downsides for supporters of the law.
One thing that people aren't really paying attention to yet was the court's decision to limit the federal government's ability to force states to expand their Medicaid program.
States, because they don't have to expand their Medicaid programs, can block half of Obamacare's new entitlement spending that way. If states refuse to create a health insurance exchange, then they can block the other half of Obamacare's new entitlement spending. So states are really in the driver's seat here. They can effectively stop the new spending under this law just by refusing to create an exchange and refusing to expand their Medicaid programs. That has to make the Obama administration very nervous.